When most people think of emo music, they think of My Chemical Romance and the band surrounding it. This viewpoint is horrifically incorrect, and I hate it, which is why I've made this video. This is a very rough guide to what you can expect from different areas of emo music, and while individual bands' categorizations might be inaccurate, they're still close enough, so they're still useful. Emo originated in the 1990s as an offshoot of hardcore metal, with a focus on crying like a little bitch when you sing. This core tenet would go on to become the center of the entire emo subgenre. I don't listen to much emo-core, so my research might be a little bit off, but these bands are essentially post-hardcore bands that are emo enough not to be entirely metal anymore. The song This Isn't the Tenka Ichi Budokai by I Hate Myself is a good example, having the traditional emo scratchy wailing vocals alongside some twinkly guitaring. Within the emotional hardcore scene, I'd like to focus on screamo, which just emphasizes the traits of emo-core. In particular, screamo vocals are defined by yelling until your throat hurts, without any regard for whether your singing is intelligible or consonant. Screamo gets a bad rep for being a bit over the top, but I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with it. The real tragedy is that the only well-known screamo song, Bodies by Drowning Pool, is a legendary piece of shit. The bands that I've listed are all easy to listen to and have some solid songs in my opinion. Later on in the 90s, a second wave of emo music began developing in the American Midwest, moving away from the hardcore metal sound and instead being influenced by math rock and indie rock. Midwest emo, as it's called, is a lot more recognizable as being emo music, and while not all Midwest emo fits under the emo math rock label, most of it does. The guitaring generally has a lot of quick finger plucking. Informally, this is called twinkly emo, but I'm not sure what the technical term is. If you listen to the first 30 seconds of Never Meant by American Football, you'll understand what I mean. Some of these bands are the most well-known emo bands outside of the mainstream emo, which I'll address later. Some of these songs can still be a bit harsh, but calm Midwest emo songs are common and kind of have a yearning tone rather than a shouting tone. Some emo music doesn't sound particularly like other genres of music, so I've categorized all of that as just general emo or indie rock emo. This music isn't inherently more emo than other emo music, but it's more undiluted and tends to have some good examples for what emo vocals sound like. With that said, if this is your only experience with emo music, you'll be missing out on most of the twinkly guitar playing. I'd recommend This Must Be My Exit by Oso Oso, The Spits Appeal by Dashboard Confessional, and Cover by Basement. At this point, I'm going to have to bring up some bands that aren't emo. You see, the mainstream Hot Topic emo scene isn't really emo in the traditional sense. Sometime in the mid-2000s, My Chemical Romance blew up beyond the rest of the emo scene, and the fans' understanding of emo was defined by them ignoring all of the emo that had come before. So this led to lots of bands associated with them being seen as emo despite the fact that they sounded nothing like emo. You could probably argue that they were all culturally emo, but I wouldn't really buy it. However, this doesn't mean the emo pop punk scene isn't real emo, it's just not the whole picture. While I would say My Chemical Romance are emo, a lot of bands in their ballpark aren't even close sonically. Even MTR itself is debatable. You can make a decent argument that only their first album was emo and everything after that was pop punk. Just please stop saying these bands are emo. Now that we've got that out of the way, we can move on to emo pop punk. Partly because of the previously mentioned controversy, this subgenre can be a little bit tricky to define, and some people would argue that it doesn't exist. In general, emo pop punk is just what it sounds like, emo music that also sounds like pop punk. Some people don't count this as emo because of how far it is from Midwest emo. There are also some bands that are only half emo, but it's still worth mentioning because they have clear emo traits in them. Emo shoegaze is honestly a great idea, and I'm surprised it isn't more common, given how dismal and yelling shoegaze can be. Emo folk sounds like a joke, but Bright Eyes somehow makes it work beautifully. Well, folk rock and indie rock are technically more accurate descriptors for Bright Eyes. Emo folk captures what they're about much more concisely. Emo rap is also interesting. I'm not sure if it counts as emo since it's more rap derived though.